pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call this meeting to order and open up for public comment by taking the floor myself. First, there will be voting for the most patriotic tie. There will be contests. You see we have a number of well-qualified and exemplary contestants, so please cast your vote on the way out. Secondly, after Wednesday's regularly scheduled finance discussion on the county grants program, a heated discussion arose regarding the new job classification and salary structure that was approved by the salary board on June 22nd. During that exchange, I used an expletive as a descriptor to the noun money. It was not used to describe, nor was it directed towards any person. Regardless, use of profanity in a public meeting of the Board of Commissioners is inappropriate and unprofessional. I apologize to the Board of Commissioners, other county staff in attendance at the meeting, and anyone who viewed the video of that exchange for using such terms in that setting. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, let's move forward to item number 3. I'll call on Keith Metz, request for a letter of support for grant funding for Hampton Township, the Department of Community and Economic Development's Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program for construction of Hampton Township Veterans Memorial Park in Hampton Township. Mr. Metz.
Good morning, Commissioners. Appreciate your time this morning. Just here before you very briefly to request your support, if you're willing to provide it to Hampton Township, the Hampton Township Veterans Recognition Committee, which is a 501c3 entity, relative to a grant submission for development of a Veterans Memorial Park and passive use facility or walking trail at an 18-acre parcel of land adjacent to I-81 and Wardsville Road. It's a vision that the Township and the Veterans Recognition Committee has had for many years now. In conjunction with the fundraising efforts of the Veterans Recognition Committee, we're hopeful that if we're awarded the grant, we would be able to proceed with the development of phase 1 of the park facility, which would essentially create the infrastructure necessary for phase 2, which would complete the vision of the memorial and the rest of the passive use facilities. Hampton Township's blessed with having a number of park facilities already. However, based upon our population and our most recent comprehensive plan update, which just occurred last month, we are in need of additional park facilities, and this one would be unique to the amenities that we currently offer, which are primarily geared towards athletic facilities and swimming pools, what have you. This would be more of a memorial in recognition of all of the veterans who have served not only Hampton Township, but this nation, and we would appreciate your support. I also want to recognize CADIC for their support in assisting the Veterans Committee and the Township with the development and submission of the grant application. Happy to address any questions that you may have.
Good support from the golf club.
Yes, ma'am.
Keith, I appreciate the recognition to those who have served the nation, but I think what's also important to me about this is how many acres are involved here?
18.8 acres of land, which was donated by the development of the giant Hampton Marketplace Way.
I want to commend you and the commissioners also for setting aside these additional acres for additional open space on West Shore. I think that that's very important, and as I understand, this is also going to be an opportunity for passive recreation, which is a terrific thing, and so I think as we see ongoing development, it's also good to see efforts being taken and made to preserve open space for our citizens. And so
I agree. Thank you.
I commend you and the commissioners, and I certainly fully support this proposal.
Appreciate that very much.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I like the time of your meeting, by the way. I'll talk to my commissioner.
Duly let the record reflect. Let's move on to item number 4, call on Sylvia Herman, Robin Tolan, and Jack Harrell to discuss the 2015-16 Cumberland County Human Services Plan.
Good morning. The three of us are.
Hold on, Robin has to stand up.
She hurt her leg.
Oh, all right.
It's swollen.
I have a brace on it.
Sit down. Didn't Robin do all the work?
Yeah, she did, but. Okay, good morning. This is the draft of the Cumberland County Human Service Plan. Approximately 6 weeks ago, the Department of Human Services and State issued the guidelines for this plan, so there was a exceedingly short turnaround time to be able to gather information. This involves Cumberland Perry County MHID, Cumberland Perry County Drug and Alcohol, Cumberland County Aging and Community Services, and Cumberland County Children and Youth coming together. As has been historical, the Human Service Policy Team takes a very active role in the planning process. Additionally, the human service agencies, as mentioned, do have advisory boards that meet monthly that are comprised of individuals from throughout the community by the commissioners from their respective counties, who also at a monthly basis look at data information, budget information, etc. There are also additional meetings held that involve providers, service recipients, family members, community for input. So, as you're well aware, planning is an ongoing process that never ends. So, from this, the guidelines are very similar to those that were provided the year before. And the human service agencies developed their own specific information about what has occurred during last fiscal year, so that could be included in the plan. All that comes to Robin, who takes it all and puts it together into the framework required by the state, and also ties together the different pieces of the information that comes before us. Linda McCulloch, who's the Chief Fiscal Officer for MHID, does all the fiscal information. The largest part of the plan really is the mental health component to it, so it makes sense that we gather that information. Perry County also has a human services plan, which Robin also compiles and puts together, with Linda doing all that information as well. Once this is submitted, which is Monday, it's due July 6th, it will be posted on the website, for individuals to look at. Anyone who has questions can, of course, come back and ask us. Probably one of the most critical pieces is that we still do not have a state budget for current fiscal year, which started yesterday. So although there is planning in here around things that we would like to be able to implement depending upon what comes back from the state budget, we may or may not be able to head with some of those plans, as is always the situation. Data.
If anything, and we've experienced that delay in the state budget before. What I believe has worked well in the past is that sort of that update to the chief clerk, what those impacts will be as you see them, as you them, we can position ourselves to respond to them. I think the Patriot published the delays. I forwarded it to the chief clerk and saw more than a week in some cases. So, but again, that impact to vendors and service and our consumers is very, very important.
Yes.
So how best we position ourselves to be able to address that. Again, that's worked well in the past when we needed it. So I would just ask that you certainly keep the chief clerk, whatever sort of schedule he has. I don't know if that's going to be weekly or, whatever, but seriously, so there are no surprises here, at least, for us.
At the last Human Service Policy Team, we did have a conversation about that, and so we're all in the process of pulling together monthly typical information about what bills have historically been because you're correct, that for many of our providers who are smaller providers,
Correct.
without having any resources come in, they're not able to
Right.
staff and to continue forward with services.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of pulling all that together for Larry and making sure that he gets that information. Do we think, Jack?
Only 2 points. One is to kind of reinforce what Sylvia said. I think the most challenging part about doing a plan for services is not knowing what the allocations will be. And the fact is that the governor did propose some increases, but it's very hard to tell what's likely to happen. In the alternative version that was passed by the General Assembly, it was essentially flat funding. I know for my portion of the plan, and I think that was true for the others as well, it was sort of a two-part plan. And that is, if it's flat funding, then our challenge is going to be to sustain what we already have. If we're fortunate enough to have some additional funding, then here's where we need to focus on. And then the second point is to just really thank Robin, because she has to edit all this stuff that we submit to her. She proofs it and she makes sure that it makes sense when we put it all together. So thank you very much.
Do you have anything to say?
No,
So was doing this the straw that broke your ankle?
No, I wasn't kicking anything.
And I know that the folks in Human Services have never been bashful about bringing concerns or issues to myself in a proactive manner, which then makes it much more effective to deal with, gives us more options. So we will continue on that discussion, and hopefully that across the river, wisdom prevails.
We hope.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 5, we're calling Commissioner Cross, a recognition and thank you letter to the Cumberland County Transportation Department as they transition to rapid.
I have a letter that has been prepared and would call upon my colleagues to sign, that goes to the Transportation Department and specifically Rose and her team. It states that July the 1st ushered in a new era of shared ride transportation in Cumberland County with the merger of the Transportation Department and Rapid Transit. As the transportation team transitions from employment in Cumberland County to Rapid Transit, the Board of Commissioners offers a heartfelt thank you for the outstanding work and accomplishments of the team. The team has consistently put the needs of its customers first and worked tirelessly to make sure that each and every trip was provided on time to the highest standard of quality. Moving forward, the board is confident that the Cumberland County Transportation Department, now part of Rapid Transit, will uphold its work ethic and standard of customer service excellence to make this merger a success. The Board of Commissioners wishes to thank each employee for their contributions to improve our county over the past years and look forward to our new partnership with Rapid Transit. So, no actions required, but this will come to each of us on our desk for signature sometime next week.
Madam Chair, if I could just comment on that as well. I think what was important about this transition to me was, first of all, that we recognize the dedication of a lot of good people who work in the county transportation department. No one through this transition lost their jobs. And also, this week we signed the agreement with the IDA to move forward. And one of the things that I want to spread upon the record, if you will, that I was assured of in signing that agreement in conversation with our solicitor, is that all existing services in terms of paratransit in Cumberland County will continue as is. There will be no reduction in service. And that includes, for our senior citizens, fare-free transportation if you're 60 and older to go to and from an assortment of locations. Recently, we added the public library as a destination. So all of those services will continue uninterrupted. I think one of the things that our chief clerk has pointed out also, and we're well aware of, is there will now be, hopefully, in the near future, Saturday service as well, which is something that our folks have not benefited from because it's mainly been a Monday through Friday operation. So there were savings here. None of our employees lost their jobs. They now work for Yada, but there's also an improvement anticipated with respect to service through the savings that we're able to achieve as a result of this agreement of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also just like to thank some of the individuals who played an instrumental role. There's more details in this than I think any of us imagine. I want to thank our solicitor, Keith Berman, John Locke, Lena Best, of course Rose, and Kirk for transportation, our finance department, led by Dana, and Dana Best, and our controls department. There were a lot of details that had to be taken care of to make this happen in a way that was seamless, so that service would not be interrupted, and all the legal requirements and verifications would be in place. So thank you, everybody, for your efforts. Let us move on now to Sandy Moyle and contracts and rates.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin with Wendy Schaefer discussing the agreements between Aging and Community Services and Allied Attorneys and York County Transportation Authority doing business as Rapid Transit. Wendy?
Good morning. As we just spoke, Aging and Community Services is requesting approval on the agreement with Rapid Transit to continue our service to senior citizens. The second is a 1516 Allied Attorneys. It's actually an amendment. What it does is extends the term of the agreement for 1 more year. Services and rates remain the same.
Thank you, Wendy. Next, I'll call on Rebecca Finke to discuss the acceptance of grant money awarded from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. Rebecca?
Good morning. This is the annual combined county IP grant. It's for $27,000 more than we received in the last year. I did reach out to PCCD to ask what the budget impasse might mean for this grant. They are still awaiting word from their budget office on what direction to give us. So I've kept Dana in the loop, and Jack and Darby, who also have funding under the grant, just so they're aware. But hopefully word will come in soon.
Any questions? Thank you, Rebecca. Next, I'd like to call on Lisa Ryder to discuss the agreements between Children and Youth Services and Diacon Lutheran Social Ministries, Commonwealth Affiliates, PC, and Hemphill Behavioral Health. And Lisa?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here to ask for approval for Diacon Lutheran Services. It's a memorandum of understanding for sworn legal services. They provide 2 paralegals for our office at no cost to us. We just give them space to do work for our courts. Commonwealth Affiliates is our psychiatric services with Dr. Kreco, and Hempfield Behavioral is counseling services. They're all for fiscal year 15-16, and there's no increase to premiums.
Are there any questions for Lisa? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Paul Manette to discuss the agreements between CMRC and Commercial Industrial Laundry Service, Inc., Department of Veterans Affairs, Institute of Caregiver Education, Inc., and Cumberland Perry Health Education Resources Center. Lynette?
Yes, on behalf of Claremont, we're requesting approval of the Sills laundry service. There's no increase this year. What this is it's the PM on our laundry equipment as well as any repairs. Neither the PM nor the hourly rate has increased. The second one is a revenue contract with the Veterans Affairs for the 15-16 fiscal year. There's no increase. That rate is determined on the MA rate, and so if there would be anything, which doesn't look like there's going to be, this would be amended, but this is to continue to start for the 15-16 fiscal year. The third one is the Institute of Caregivers Education. This is to provide it's a continuing of the existing contract. This is to allow their students, their nursing students, to come in and get practical experience as well as having an exposure to our facility. And this, they do currently work with us, and if that goes well, there's no cost to this contract. And the last one is the Cumberland Perry Health Education Resource Center. It's for the CPR classes. This is a reduction of cost for our CPR classes. All of our nurses and activities in most of our facility need to have their CPR training, and this is who offers this to us. Any questions?
Thank you, Annette. Next, I'd like to call on Dave Freed to discuss the submission of a grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Dave?
Good morning. This is our request for action or submission of this grant to the Department of Transportation for coordinated DUI enforcement in the county. We've done this for many, many, many years. I don't know how many. And it provides us money from PennDOT to do things like checkpoints. More often now what we do are roving patrols and blitzes, so we get more cars out on the street at times of high DUI concentration, such as the 4th of July. Labor Day, St. Patrick's Day, things of that nature.
Alcohol is pyrotechnics. I mean, what's going on?
Super Bowl Sunday.
Halloween.
No, but that's the public warning. Okay?
And of course, for those of us with teenagers that remember those days, the night before Thanksgiving, which is the biggest night of the year. It's really been an effective tool for us in terms of deterrence. There was a lot of litigation in years past about checkpoints. That's all been taken care of. But as I said, we found more efficiency doing the blitzes and the roving patrols, and even some phantom checkpoints. So you set a phantom checkpoint up, and it just makes people think. So a very effective program funded by PennDOT, and we administer it, and it's no match. So we'd ask for, I guess, action at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
I just want to point out that in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, they actually publish in advance the dates, times, and places where the DUI checkpoints will be posted. However, due to the relatively low literacy rate in that community, business is still good.
Well, in Pennsylvania, we have to publish that there will be an operation within the county, and we do that. And to the extent we're doing a checkpoint especially, there are requirements that I look at and I sign off on to say, yes, this is the appropriate place to do it, which is one of the court-related checkpoints. Now, Larry, the question is, in Berkeley Springs, are they checking people for the purity of their drinking water? Because I heard that's an article, but that's the home of the purest drinking water.
We're going to add that on.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Next, I'd like to call on Jack Carroll to discuss the 5/2015-16 outpatient agreements and the 14/2015-16 inpatient agreements for drug and alcohol. Jack?
Thank you, Sandy. Commissioners, we're asking for your approval of 2 sets of contracts with our service providers. The first is a set of outpatient contracts, licensed drug and alcohol treatment outpatient agencies. And with these agencies, there will be no increase in rates, so it's a flat funding arrangement. The second group are a longer list of our various inpatient, hospital and non-hospital detox, rehabilitation, and halfway house treatment facilities. The rates for these programs are set by the Drug and Alcohol Administrative Units in their region through a statewide rate-setting process. And the facilities, if they want a rate increase, must submit a package that justifies. And then the group of SCAs from that area determines whether or not an increase is warranted, and if so, in what amount. Some of these fall within our region, some the rates are set by other parts of the state, because we use inpatient facilities throughout the state. About 40% of the facilities are going to see some increase in their per diem. It's generally in the 2 to 4% range. The other 60%, there will be a 0% increase in the per diem. Questions? Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to call on John Locke, who's here to discuss the agreement between Facilities Management and First Night Carlisle Inc. John?
Yes, Commissioners, this is an agreement between the county and First Night Carlisle Incorporated for a New Year's Eve celebration. And they call it First Night, and they are asking to use the old courthouse, the second floor courtroom. They've been doing this for several years. It's proved to be a very successful event. And they're using the courtroom from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. And they also are requesting some parking spaces, which we have supplied in the past. I have also talked to the solicitor. He has drafted the agreement, and it's just ready for signature.
Any questions?
And the DUI checkpoint that will fall.
We'll do that on the way to
Something here. Okay. Let the party begin.
Next, Ron's notes here to discuss the agreement between the Finance Department and Huggins Actuarial Services and Ron.
Good morning. This is for our annual actuarial review on our workers' comp self-insurance fund with Huggins. The purpose of it is to set our workers' comp rates, and they will make a recommendation on our minimum required balance on our account. It's an increase of $166 over last year.
Any questions for Ron? Thank you, Ron. Finally, I'd like to call on Chuck Fair, who will be discussing the agreement between Adult Probation and VI Incorporated. Chuck?
Good morning. We never want to miss an opportunity to display the colors.
I like the time. Yeah.
This is our annual agreement for the support and maintenance of our 41 GPS units we use on defendants who get time out of jail, but also are hooked up with bracelets. So there's no increase in cost for the current year, same as last year.
Any questions? Thank you, Chuck. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sandy. Item number 7, discussion of resolution 2015-17 regarding budget adjustment and Ron Snow.
Criminal justice planning and IP programs is increasing revenues and expenses by $1,500 for a grant from DCCD to buy cognitive behavioral therapy workbooks for adult probation, and there's no impact to general.
Thank you. Any questions for Ron? Move on to item number 8, Attorney Kate Molinaro. Commercial revitalization shop steady loan program request regarding real estate located at 2 West Big Spring Avenue, Newville, in Newville Borough. Kate.
Good morning. We're before you to request the issuance of a $70,000 CDBG shop setting loan to Jeffrey Bowder. And Mr. Bowder will use this loan and other private financing to acquire 2 West Big Spring Avenue in Newville. This property has 3 commercial spaces, one of which is currently occupied, and 2 residential units, which are both occupied. And this loan will require the creation of 2 jobs to be made available to low-income persons. And Mr. Bowder has already identified a restaurant tenant for one of the 2 vacant commercial spaces that is anticipated to meet that requirement.
Are there any questions or comments for Kate? Kate, we're on a roll. Let's move on to number 9, discussion of community housing development organizations certification.
And as you're all aware, the county is required to allocate 15% of its annual home allocation to a certified community housing development organization, or a CHODO. The CHODO that the county has previously certified no longer meets HUD's definition of a CHODO, and so the authority issued a solicitation for applications for organizations who are interested in being the county's certified CHODO. We received 1 response from Tri-County Housing Development Corporation. We reviewed the application and determined that they do meet the definition of CHODO, and is pleased to recommend to the Board of Commissioners that they certify Tri-County HDC as the county's CHODO. They would be required to apply for home investment partnerships funding during the annual application cycle that we have every year in developing the annual action plan.
Any questions for Kate? Thank you, Kate. Let's move then on to item number 10, on Justin Miller, discussion of Cumberland County recycling waste memo regarding waste management plan transporter registration.
Good morning, Commissioners. The county has been licensing or registering waste haulers since, I believe, the first waste management plan in the early 90s. Initially, it was a licensing program. Annually, they would submit a paper application, and there were fees due, and we would issue them decals for each vehicle they had. The state came along in 2002, passed a law that said haulers had to be licensed at the state level, and there were fees associated with that. I think the industry saw some redundancy, so they actually sued, I think it was Lehigh County, over their licensing program. We're victorious, so we switched ours to a what we call registration program, no fees. This year was the first year that I actually handled that whole process, and so an application would come in, and first thing I would do would be go to the state's webpage and make sure they were registered with the state. And I started asking myself, why are we doing this if it's kind of redundant? The state's already doing it. So I talked to some haulers, I talked to some disposal facilities. I asked them if they ever asked to see a Cumberland County registration. They said no. So I came up with a proposal to revise our waste management plan and eliminate that requirement. I think it's redundant. You can go online and you can find all the state authorized haulers, including the septic haulers. And it takes a lot of time, and there's some paper costs to mail out applications, get them back, review them, issue certificates. If you're in agreement with me, there is a formal process you have to follow with the state to revise your plan. Basically, you have to give your municipalities notification that you're going to do this, and your advisory committee, which is really our authority. And I've talked to the authority; they're on board, and I mentioned it at some of the outreach meetings. I know you heard some of the reaction. The municipalities have no concerns as long as they can go on the state's site and get the information. The process would be notify them, do the actual work, and I would just do an addendum to our plan saying we're removing that requirement. Then you have to give the municipalities and the authority 30 days notice to make any comments, and then you submit it to the state for approval.
So what was the original intent of the licensing? Obviously, some motivation to get licensing fees there, but there's other reasons.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is instead of a trickle down effect, this has kind of been a trickle up effect. Initially, actually municipalities were licensing haulers. And then when counties started doing waste management plans, counties kind of took over that responsibility. And the municipalities kind of relied on the county to make sure legitimate businesses were doing this. And now it's kind of going up to the state.
Do you know why the state did it? Is it because
I heard that the reason was they just had no idea what was going on in the state, and they wanted to get a better feel for what exactly was going on.
I guess that leads to my next question, which is, if we do away with registration, does that rob you of vital information you need to know?
Yeah, no, what I'm proposing, we actually have an ordinance that was adopted with the most recent plan. I'm proposing just to remove the section that requires them to submit this application. We would keep the other requirements of submitting recycling reports. And I talked to haulers, and they said, you'll have no problem getting that data from us. And I think they'd be very happy, and work with us since we're really eliminating some work for them.
So if a new hauler appears on the scene or whatever, how do they know to submit reports to you? How do they get on your radar? I assume that's what part of the...
Yeah, well, I'll monitor the state's list is what I'll do.
So that falls to you, essentially.
Yeah. Our registration was more inclusive because the state had, I don't know if you have the memo there, but the state had a limit. And our ordinance technically says anyone, like even a guy in a pickup truck. But I'm going to tell you, that's darn near impossible to identify those folks. It's very hard. It's sometimes hard to even get the bigger guys to remember to do it on an annual basis.
So the state is either going to be proactive and put this on their website, and you're going to be able to pull it up.
Yeah, it's there now.
Okay. Can you send to the state? Is it too late? Let's say a hauler comes in, and they're not with the state. Can you then go to the state and say, hey, look, we got this guy?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, I will say, this year I discovered that there's a septic hauler. We got an application in. I went to the state. I could not find in one of the states on this. Actually, what happened is they had a more stringent registration. They were actually registered for biosolids and not septic. So I notified the state, and they're going to rectify the problem. I think that could still happen. But the state, I printed this out. The state has a very online descriptive program of how haulers register. They can do it either online or paper application. Here's the septic hauler. That's a booklet and application. I think they're
So while
going
there's
pretty
a
good program.
standardization at the state, there's really no county standardization or municipal one.
No.
So
It's kind of going the
while we're doing this, Franklin could be doing something different.
Yeah, some don't, some are not registering, yeah. I think it was historical and we previous people probably wanted to keep it, but I just don't, I just think it's redundant and, takes time and money.
And I think you brought us a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you really did.
There's no lost
So-
salary here, right?
No, there's not.
No, we're saving,
Well, yeah, you're gonna
it's
get about
mostly time,
1,500
yeah.
plus, but
At
still.
over 10 years, that's 15.
That's right, and it's your time, effort, and energy in doing this.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Eichelberger's question, I mean, and it is honestly a little bit of a blur, but I do recall, Act 101, part of that, I think it was like 1988 when that was put into place. If some folks may recall, that we were having a problem here in Pennsylvania in terms of being a dumping ground for waste from other states. There was a problem where essentially a lot of New Jerseys and New York's solid waste was coming here. Part of, I think, this whole effort, if I recall correctly, was aimed at ensuring that we have sufficient space, in Pennsylvania to dispose of our waste, and then to do what we could to limit, us becoming a dumping ground for other states. The shift to the counties was essentially to Act 101 recycling, but also to make sure that we had adequate disposal
capacity.
So my question is, that now, if this is going back now to the state's, doing the licensing and haulers of that, does this impact in any way, our ability, I think that's what was Gary getting at, does this impact in any way our ability to make sure that we have adequate disposal capacity and/or that we're essentially taking care of our own, and then also to what extent we can limit outside the folks who come into the state to dump here?
I don't think it has any impact. I think that the real purpose of this was safety. Because one of the requirements, both at the state and our level, was to provide evidence of adequate insurance. It was really a safety, transportation safety. Actually, I think it's called the Waste Transportation Safety Act at the state level. It's more of a safety issue than a disposal capacity issue.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Justin? Justin, thanks for bringing us a good idea.
Can I wanted to mention something else. Wanted to let you know that we did not get a single bid for the electronics recycling.
What?
And I sent 11 courtesy copies out. I asked DEP to distribute copies. Did not get a single bid. And I called a couple of vendors that got courtesy copies, and I asked them, is there anything that scared you? And just wanted to make a few comments. What I heard directly from them. One, they told me that fewer and fewer recyclers are willing to do drop-off events. The logistics of those are just difficult for them to deal with. And therefore, you're competing for a much smaller pool of recyclers, and a lot of them already had some events scheduled for the fall. Tied to that, our historical data, Cumberland's a pretty big county, and our past events, we generated a lot of material. And I think that scared some of them. It's a lot of material to manage in one day. Tied to that was the option for multiple collection sites on the same day. They did not like that because it further scared them. They thought just more material, more logistics to deal with. And basically, they all admitted the industry right now is in a big mess. They're trying to figure out what to do, what's going on. And for those reasons, I talked to Keith, I'm recommending we don't go back out to bid right away, but evaluate the bid document, and maybe think about doing something in 2016.
Since you mentioned about shrinking pool and simply the constraint that they're under because they already have commitments, did you get any feedback regarding alternative timeframes that might have made it more?
Yeah, no, the only thing he told me is that the spring and fall are their busiest times. People don't like to do things in the hot summer or the cold winter. But a lot of people do put stuff out and get a longer, the planning probably, we should give them a little bit longer notice time.
And on those 3 drop-offs, while it would be ideal to have them all on one day, you could spread that out for 3 weeks.
Yeah, actually.
So in other words, here's a Saturday on the West Shore, here's a Saturday in Carlisle, here's a
Yeah.
Saturday towards Shippensburg.
That's what the one vendor recommended. If you want to do multiple locations.
Then just do them on different days.
Spread them out.
But I can tell you the $3,000 that I had here for the conservation district that was coming to you, I'm gonna take that off my report, because obviously they don't need that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, they were gonna,
Yeah.
from our,
The
district
other
meeting.
thing, I mean, if we try to go out for bids again, it's going to probably delay us a month. And we were trying to be pretty aggressive for the end of September, and now we would be looking at the end of October, early November. And I just think that's too late in the season to try to do something this year.
Justin, we need to keep this on the radar screen, okay? I mean, this state law is not working, okay? So, we need to figure out a way to communicate that to our legislature.
I 100% agree. Actually, the one vendor who did our events in the past, they're actually in New York State. New York State has a fairly similar law, a little different. They're experiencing the exact same situation. And he said the same thing. He said the legislators are sitting there thinking everything's working fine. The recyclers are telling them it's not, they're not listening. He thinks it's going to take the public starting to make some noise.
No, I know how many TVs are in the street, by the side of the road and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, maybe part of this might be, right now we have, a lot of our collectors that are, collecting cans, bottles, and all that, so you have that as part of the contract. And then maybe this is something that's gonna have to be part of the contract, at the municipal level. But the legislature needs to provide the funding and/or the mechanism, to help make this work, because nobody wants to see, television sets and that being essentially landfill. But on the other hand, if you don't provide a mechanism that works, right, they will end up, in the woods.
Well, and that's why I said, the Conservation District said, we don't have a lot, this is what the board indicated, but we have $3,000 because we don't want this in the Cumberland or the Elk region. So, that's.
What's interesting too, when talking to the vendors, they all also were scared of TVs. They've said, is there any way you can limit a resident to one TV? And I said, well, that's kind of double-edged sword, because our biggest issue is
Our
TVs.
television,
Yeah, so it's, I'm not sure what's gonna happen, but it's.
Okay, so the good news, you brought us on one. Now you just negated on the other.
I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to let you know, though.
Well, yeah.
that we don't get any issues.
I know.
Yeah, maybe this is something we could also bring up, not only with our legislators, but also at one of our
It's-
municipal
yeah.
advisory.
Well, and again, we can't be the only ones out there.
All of our municipalities are dealing with this problem.
I think we heard that at the outreach meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this is,
that's right.
for the MAB, it's probably, because we're all against it.
We heard it down at in the western part, down there in Southampton Township just a couple of weeks ago. I tell you, the farmers are worried about it too, because, a lot of people, they're dumping this on their land.
Why?
And then what do they do?
Yeah.
It's their
And I think Section was
responsibility.
giving you money too. I mean, there were 2 sources coming
Yes.
from some, responsible entities in the county to support this thing. So,
Just at one point, we heard that the replacement cycle on televisions was probably going to taper off because everybody converting over with the digital changeover and the move from CRTs to flat screens and all that. Are we getting any indication that the capacity?
No, I've been hearing like 7 to 8 years.
Really?
Yeah, for that. Now, that was probably a year or 2 ago, so maybe, but I don't, that's, guesstimates, I think. And I was given a presentation last night and that same issue came up. I said, by that time, I'll probably discover something with the new TV.
I was gonna say the new generation,
Yeah.
the TVs, the LEDs, the 4K, all that kind of TVs.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, watching on your way.
Yeah. Thank you,
Hey,
Justin.
Okay.
thanks, come back anytime.
Sorry about that.
Let's go to item number 11, Ron Weigel, discussion to authorize advertising for the tax bill printing contract for 2016 for the assessment office.
Basically just said it. We're just asking you to authorize advertising so we can get bids for printing the 2016 tax bills.
Any questions for Rob? Thank you. Call on Commissioner Cross for the ratification of agreements with York Adams Transportation Authority effective July 1, 2015, and there is action.
That pretty much sums it up. Item number 12, I also make a motion for the ratification of the agreements with York Adams Transportation effective 1 July for the written release. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion on the written release? All those in favor? Any opposed? I will also make the motion for the ratification of the agreement with York Adams Transportation Authority effective the 1st of July this year for the transportation agreement. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? I will turn it back over to the chief clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Item number 13, discussion of the resolution regarding the establishment of the tax increment financing district for the IAC-Massillon site within the borough. Calling on Barry Heath, President of the Carlisle Borough, Jonathan Cox, former attorney with the CCIDA, and our good friend Jonathan Bowser.
Good. First of all, I want to know who the other competition is for the tie contest. Commissioners, thank you for having us here today. We're here asking for your ongoing support of some redevelopment activities that I know you've been abreast of for a long time within the borough. And as we continue to move forward, some of the strategies that we need to put in place are requiring some creative thinking, some creative doing, and some creative acting in order to make some of these things happen. As you're aware, there's a contingency of us that are here today to answer any questions you might have about our urban redevelopment plan. And who's controlling the slides? Oh, here it comes. Jonathan, you going to control the slides?
He's been trained in this.
Highly trained. He has a certificate. The site that we're talking about, over the last number of years, you're aware that we were talking about 3 brownfield sites that are being redeveloped within the borough. The former IAC Maslin site, the Carlisle Tire and Wheel site, and the Tyco Electronics site. The site that we're talking about specifically today is the revitalization of the IAC site. And while we continue to move forward with the other 2, the tax and financing strategy that we're going to discuss with you here today has to do solely with the IAC site. The project location, you know its current state. Those pictures are pretty dramatic representations of what has been in the past. I'm here to tell you that probably within the next 30 days or so, that site should be cleared and pad ready. The demolition and the crushing of the concrete continues in earnest, and I think it's moving ahead very, very nicely. We have worked very hard to try. We have tried to work very hard at advancing and staying ahead of the development community. And the TIP financing proposal is just that, trying to stay ahead of developers so that when we do get significant amounts of interest, we're in a position to immediately move forward as opposed to having a delay. This, I don't expect you to be able to decipher given the slide, but I also believe that in one of the handouts that you were just given, if you open it up, you'll see in much greater detail what the proposed redevelopment is. The flyer that you're looking at is one that we created for the benefit of applying for the Tiger Grant funding, which we now have to the federal government, that totals in excess of $12 million. The project overview right now is one that I think you're pretty familiar with. It's a brownfield area. it represents one of the few spots, one of only three, frankly, that the borough has available for redevelopment purposes. The borough is built out. There are no other development opportunities, and so therefore, when the closing of these manufacturing facilities took place, we immediately decided that this created an opportunity as opposed to something for us to cry over. Needless to say, we were very disappointed when they closed because there was a lot of loss of jobs. And selfishly speaking, from the taxing authorities, there was a lot of loss in property assessed value as well as tax receipts. One of the intended consequences of this revitalization effort is that the neighborhoods, we think, are going to be enhanced. We think that home values will be improved. We believe that the street and pedestrian and commercial traffic will be improved, and overall it's going to create jobs because the proposed development, as you're looking at, has a lot of commercial, retail, institutional type opportunities available that will in fact bring more jobs. And one of the key strategies that we're committed to very, very strongly is we want to make sure that we don't create a separate entity for retail, commercial, and residential purposes, but there is in fact a corridor and a very distinct downtown connection. So the link between the downtown, that is the 200 block of North Hanover Street in particular, and the Spring Road turns are very, very significant. So what have we done today? The key funding sources to date. We've been very successful. We've not been granted all of the requests that we've been after, but we have on the other hand been quite successful. The private development that Carlisle Events in particular has put into this project, and I'll speak more about what they're bringing to the table in ongoing pursuit of development. They've already invested about $2.7 million in the acquisition of the property and remediation of hazardous materials, ongoing demolition. We've been successful at achieving so far about $5.2 million in grants, and those include $2 million in RCAP money, $1 million through the Cumberland County Redevelopment Authority. We just received within the last several months a PennDOT multimodal grant for $1.5 million. An EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant for $400,000 and an EPA area-wide grant of $200,000. In addition, the DCED is touting this as one of the premier redevelopment projects in the entire state. And I had the good fortune of actually emceeing a video production that DCED has put together in our behalf, touting this Carlisle Urban Redevelopment Project as a model redevelopment for brownfield sites throughout the state, and it currently resides on the DCED website. We early on got a $40,000 Tri-County Planning Commission grant, and the plan has now been adopted for more than 2 years and can be found at the website that you see on your screen at carlisleplan.com. The tax increment financing that we would like to talk to you about now can be very detailed and can be very cumbersome, but John Cox, who's our bond counsel from Rose and Simon, will now explain to you a little bit about the TIF process after I highlight some of the other prospective project funding sources that we have. I spent a day along with the mayor and Jonathan and Ben and the folks from the Redevelopment Authority in Washington, D.C., positioning our Tiger Grant application. This is a major attempt at trying to get matching money or trying to get funding to improve the infrastructure to make this project development ready. We have also applied for another $3 million in multimodal grant funding. The property owner and developer cannot be overstated about the contribution that they've made. I just highlighted the fact that they have invested already $2.7 million in acquisition, renovation, or remediation and demolition. But when you consider the amount of land that they are contributing as in kind in order to facilitate the plan, for example, you're probably familiar with the fact that the letter streets are all proposed to come through the sites to create a continuing city grid. A Street, B Street, C Street, D Street are proposed to come through the site. We're also proposing to widen Fairground Avenue so that it can be accommodate two-way traffic. Well, when you add all that up, it's a contribution of more than 7 acres that Carlisle Events is actually donating to the plan. And as they have marketed the property, they are marketing it and have significant interest in a couple of prospective entities who are willing to pay in the neighborhood of $250,000 an acre for that land. So if you multiply that out by the in-kind contribution that they're making, it too is a very, very major contribution. In addition, they're putting cash on the table for some of the grants that require cash match.
The match is what, they're putting up some money.
They're putting in cash for the match. As a matter of fact, I can go back and let you know that we have committed a 40% match to the Tiger Grant application, 40% to include the TIF financing that we're here to talk to you about today, the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Bank loan, borough cash reserves and debt, as well as other cash that the private owners put in.
So the Tiger Grant's dependent on TIF approval. Is that correct?
It's heavily dependent on TIF approval, yes. However, if the TIF is not approved, it's not the end of the world. We're just going to end up having to scale back what it is that we're able to accept and match. The Tiger Grant application actually requires a minimum of 20% match. We have 40% at this point, so it would be a scaling.
Makes sense.
So, John, you want to follow up with the tax financing?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tax increment financing is an economic development, redevelopment tool that, in a nutshell, asking the taxing bodies to agree to forward a portion of incremental tax revenues associated with future development. Asking them to agree to forward a portion, all or a portion, of those incremental revenues for up to 20 years to pay debt service on a note or a bond issued up front to generate cash that would be used in part for these proposed infrastructure improvements within the borough. Under the TIF Act, the authority is required to coordinate the effort, to work with the taxing bodies, the developer, to develop a detailed tax increment financing plan. And that's really the essence of the request today. We're required to make a quote-unquote formal presentation to each of the taxing bodies to ask for their participation in the planning process. And each taxing body typically appoints usually 2 people or more, but usually 2 people to participate in the planning process. We typically meet on a monthly basis until we kind of get everyone on the same page. We've addressed all of the details of the plan. Then the plan comes back to each of the taxing bodies for formal approval. And the way the TIF process works under the Act, in this case, the borough would be the final step of the process to enact the ordinance creating the TIF district. The law requires before that happens that the other 2 taxing bodies consider a resolution to opt in or opt out in terms of their participation as contemplated in the TIF plan. This is just a schematic showing how TIF works. The bottom bluish purple represents the base assessed value. As Perry alluded to, the assessed value of this property obviously has gone down over time, but the current assessed value is not subject to the pledge, if you will. So 100% of the tax revenues generated on the current base will continue to come to the taxing bodies and be retained by the taxing bodies. The way TIF works is the red shows the increase in the assessed value as the vertical construction commences and the improvements are made. Obviously, the assessed value of the property increases over time and produces incremental tax revenues. Those tax revenues can be pledged, as I said, for up to 20 years, the end of which 100% so the base plus the additional revenues are on the tax rolls and the tax bodies retain those revenues.
John, can I just stop you right there? One of the clarifications. So essentially, what we're talking about is as we move forward with this, whatever the current taxes are that we are receiving, on the property, we will continue to receive those tax revenues.
That's correct.
and that as this development occurs, there would be an increase in the assessed value and therefore an increase in taxes. And what this is about is dedicating a portion or all of the increased revenue that would be generated for the individual entities, the school district, the borough, and the county, to pay off the bond debt for a period of time. Is that?
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's 100% correct.
Okay, so, and this is, you know, undoubtedly the way you would look at this, is that this is these are additional revenues that we would not otherwise receive if it were not for this redevelopment to occur.
Correct. Yeah, the idea behind, there is a but-for test concept in the TIF Act that but for this TIF and the proceeds generated through the upfront note or bond issue, those infrastructure improvements would not happen. And the development would not occur or would not occur to the extent anticipated or envisioned.
And then each individual parcel receives their own assessment as it comes to full development.
Correct.
So the condominium that is purchased is assessed at whatever amount that is.
Correct, and the taxes are assessed and collected in the ordinary course. So the county, the school district, and the borough would collect those taxes, and then once received, it's a current obligation of tax advisors to forward only the portion of the increment that they would need to forward under the TIF fund. So to the extent the revenues don't materialize or can't be collected, there's no obligation, obviously, as a tax advisor.
So if in fact the retail anchor never appears, but the condominium, single homes, and whatever do, that's not a failure simply because the whole plan did not materialize, correct?
Correct.
So a portion of this could be left undeveloped.
The underwriter or lender will have something to say about that. Typically,
I'm saying, you know, the home part of it, you know, may be sounding really well. Or perhaps the homes, maybe not so much, but the retail, the restaurants, the space there might. So I guess my question is it all dependent on one? Or can each of these parcels, you know, take a development opportunity on their own? I'm seeing Perry kind of nod.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me, from a bond counsel perspective, let me address that. The TIF plan will work very closely with the developer to put in an estimated phasing plan. Because obviously that controls the future cash flows. We also have to work with a prospective underwriter or lender. We're working with Public Financial Management as the financial advisor. And based on the size of this, it's close to cutoff between a bank loan and a public offering. We may phase in the financing, issue, you know, tranches against those revenues as they ramp up to mitigate some of those risks. You don't want to necessarily issue it all at once on a speculative basis that the entire plan is going to come to fruition. But I can assure you that the lender or underwriter, in doing their due diligence, are going to be asking those questions. And in many, for projects like this that are multi-purpose commercial development, they'll be looking for commitments, signed contracts to move forward. A material portion of the site, 78% lease commitment, something like that. They want to see firm commitments for that property to be developed. In addition, as part of the TIF planning process, lenders and underwriters are going to look for a buffer, what we call debt service coverage. So we want to make sure that we're projecting more tax revenues that are actually, or incremental tax revenues that are actually needed, so that if the development does not occur as quickly as anticipated, or a piece of it significantly lags behind, there are still adequate incremental revenues to service the debt. The lenders also will look for additional credit enhancements, either from the developers directly or through what's being contemplated here is a special assessment overlay district, we call it neighborhood improvement district, where the developers, the property owners essentially agree to tax themselves with a special assessment that to the extent that the tax increment revenues don't materialize, they will agree to pay a special tax to make up the difference.
And that footprint parallels the TIF district itself, or can it vary?
There's a, what should I say, unfortunate disconnect between the TIF Act and the NID Act in that regard. The TIF Act allows improvements to be funded and made outside of the boundaries of the TIF district as long as they benefit the development of the district. The NID Act requires that the improvements be made within the boundaries of the district. And so I'm currently looking into that issue here because many of the improvements contemplated will be just outside of the boundaries of the IAC Parliament's site itself. Under the Act, you can have what's called a business improvement district, where only the businesses, the commercial entities within that geographic area are subject to special assessment. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to create a overlay district that essentially only captures the development within the district.
Of the retail
But
space.
still has the geographic boundaries necessary to allow us to spend those TIF revenues outside of the development, but still be secured both by the TIF revenues and the special assessment. So that's a good question. There's some nuance there.
So this is a case where you might have an adjacent structure or piece of property that could be an eyesore, could smell bad, could pose some kind of public safety or health and safety issue that you could then remedy so as to not detract from the place you're trying to strip up.
In redevelopment in general, yes. Obviously, that can be part of the plan is to remediate blighted property, but that has to be specifically spelled out. In the case of the TIF Act, you are required to designate the area as a redevelopment area. And in this case, the Planning Commission of the borough took that action recently to designate just the TIF property, the district itself at this point. So we're not looking at this stage of the game, we're not looking at using TIF proceeds on anything other than public infrastructure.
What happens to the railroad? Does it stay, does it go?
I'll speak to that one.
I mean, I'm kind of looking at it.
There's two things that are happening with the rail. The siding that used to exist for the IHC property
Yeah.
is now gone.
Yeah.
However, there's no anticipated change in the use of the rail currently by Norfolk Southern.
Okay.
However, one of the parts of the TIF plan and of the redevelopment plan is that we intend to re-engineer and rework the interchange or the intersection at Spring Road
Right.
and Hanover Streets, where right now there are two at-grade crossings.
Yeah.
And we intend to redevelop that, so it'll be one crossing.
Okay.
So on the positive side, Norfolk Southern is all over that because they really prefer to use as many at-grade crossings as possible.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll do the next one on that.
Sure, just real briefly, this is just conceptually shows 2005 to present the decline in the amount of tax revenues produced annually on the site among the three tax, it says Cumberland County, but, yeah, okay, so I guess that's just Cumberland County, we revised this just for the county. And then shows the amount of tax revenue that would be generated based on two hypothetical models of investment in commercial development, the gray 25 million investment in commercial improvements, or the assessed value equivalent, 65 million, and the amount of tax revenues that would be generated based on the county's current village. Next slide. This is just to point out that there is a difference, obviously, between LERTA, which has been approved by the taxing bodies for the area, including the TIF district as it stands now. That would have to be repealed with respect to the existing district. Obviously, the TIF folks have to pay their taxes or all a portion of which gets pledged to pay debt service. With LERTA, it's a tax abatement for up to 10 years, where usually it's declining, where the actual property holders get a reduction in the amount of taxes that they pay annually. Next slide.
This would be the first TIF, I believe, in Cumberland County. I don't believe.
I'm not aware of any other.
Okay,
sure,
so,
I think that's right.
and why, because I think you mentioned that we originally designated this for LERTA. Was there, why have we decided how to go to the TIF alternative?
LERTA is typically used, in my experience, to incentivize development over a broad area. Whereas TIF is typically used in connection with a specific development project to generate upfront cash for extraordinary infrastructure costs associated with that development, which is obviously the case here.
Okay, so the TIF is now viewed as the better alternative than LERTA?
The TIF is viewed as the better alternative because it gives us the resources that we need in order to do the infrastructure that makes the property developable. The LERTA, on the other hand, was used to incent developers and enhance their cash flow because their taxes were abated, and therefore savings to the developer. However, the LERTA does not help us with our need for the resources to develop the infrastructure to make it developable. So at this point, the TIF is the preferred alternative.
But it'll be one or the other?
That's correct. Okay.
Just with respect to the property within the TIF district. The LERTA, the other portion of the LERTA will remain in effect.
The parcels.
Yeah, the parcels, right. Yeah, the LERTA is established over.
We may very well end up coming back asking those LERTAs to be repealed as well. The owner of the tire and wheel site has jumped on board with his willingness to subscribe to a TIF as well. Should that be the best alternative?
But there won't be any overlap here.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, it has to be a geographically contiguous.
I mean, one or the other. And a certain parcel is either going to be part of a TIF or it's going to be part of the LERTA.
All right, that was those were the comments that I wanted to make. I have to answer any other questions. I provided a TIF fact sheet to the chief clerk. It provides some general reference information for you in terms of summarizes the material provisions of the TIF Act, as well as the practical perspective, the sequence of events or timeline in terms of enacting the TIF district from a procedural perspective.
Allow me to very briefly tell you what some of our anticipated uses of the TIF fund are. It has to do predominantly with transportation issues. I just alluded to the realignment of the intersection at Spring Road, Route 34, Route 11, where we anticipate making that a 90-degree turn on will be on the north side of the railroad tracks, and single act rate crossing. Probably the most expensive and item that's going to require the most engineering is the proposed roundabout at the intersection of Hanover, Penn, and Fairground Avenue. That's going to require some property acquisition. It's been pre-engineered so that at this point it appears as though that's going to be the best solution for an already troubled intersection. Fairground Avenue is a totally new complete street. I alluded to that with the donation, when I mentioned the donation of the land required to make it a complete street by Carlisle Benz. There's a mini roundabout proposed at B Street and Fairground Avenue, and then the initial main thoroughfare going through the development is B Street being completed. At this point, it's proposed to also bisect the Carlisle Tire and Wheel site, so you'll be able to come straight from B Street instead of turning on College Street, be able to go the whole way through over the Spring Road. So those are the proposed major absolute projects that have to be done. And these have been labeled as absolutes based on the preliminary traffic studies that we've seen in the preliminary engineering in order to make this development work. So who's going to manage and operate this entire TIF? Well, Jonathan and Kate already have the IDA under their wing, and it is not necessary for us to reinvent the structure for administration of the TIF process. And so Kate is going to be doing all of that, coordinating the details of the process, and it will be the entity that borrows the funds for the TIF. I want to reiterate and emphasize a point that John made that suggests that the TIF is not a liability to any of the taxing districts. It doesn't affect our borrowing capacity. It doesn't affect our debt because it's essentially guaranteed by the property owner with the special overlay district. So if the TIF assessed values don't manifest themselves, that special overlay taxing district takes care of the unpaid debt obligation. So in a nutshell, why is the TIF needed? It's because it provides a significant upfront capital for public improvements. We're looking in the aggregate, total public improvements that are going to approach $50 million with stormwater management, with utility replacement, with the traffic improvements, etc. The TIF can be used to match other grants, and we have projected at this point. Deborah, how much did we project for the TIF for the match for Tiger?
$6 million.
We projected the TIF at $6 million for the match for the Tiger grant at this point, and it is also we're able to leverage it as matching money for other grants as well. This is all part of a comprehensive financing strategy. At the outset, I pointed out to you a lot of the receipts that we have, and we continue to look for new opportunities for grant funding and resource development. It also demonstrates our ongoing commitment to the project, and as I mentioned, DCED has identified, as has the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs out of the White House, because we are linking this with an administration initiative called My Brother's Keeper, which the Obama administration has strongly endorsed, and targeting the neighborhood, particularly the youth, and creating employment opportunities and training opportunities as well. And this is an ongoing commitment to that project. Obviously, we're going to improve our attractiveness and marketability for the project for potential investors. All of you are keenly aware of the whole economic development scale, and that is, in order for a developer to come in and build something, it's got to be financially feasible. And if we were to say to that developer, oh gee whiz, you've got to put this street through at a cost of $7 million, they say thank you very much, but we're going to go elsewhere because it just doesn't make any financial sense. So this is an investment in the long term. The TIF, as John has already explained, can be amortized over 20 years and can be paid back sooner if the tax revenues are generated. And it obviously increases the tax base. So what are the next steps? The next steps, and we would ask the Board of Commissioners to consider appointing a TIF committee representative, and frankly, we would ask you to consider appointing potentially two, so that there will always be a county representative at our committee meetings. The next step in the process is to complete a very detailed feasibility study. This is not a shot in the dark, oh, let's see, maybe we can develop X number of millions of dollars of property. There's going to be a very detailed feasibility study and financial analysis. We're going to have to repeal the LRTA, and we're not here asking you today to approve the TIF at all. We will eventually come back, assuming that you elect to appoint representatives to the TIF committee with the formal TIF plan agreement, and you'll have editorial control and privilege over before you would sign on to agree to the tax and financing strategy.
Where's the closest elementary school?
Hamilton Elementary School.
So, walkable?
Yes, very well.
Okay. I couldn't remember where Hamilton was.
That's right adjacent to Gate 1.
Okay,
Right
got it.
next to Gate 1.
Okay.
The fairgrounds is
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you again for your willingness to listen. We've taken up a lot of time, but this is also a very, very important project, we think, for not just the borough, but for the greater Carlisle community and certainly the county. Generally. Thanks.
Okay, on the resolution, you need that when?
It's completely up to you.
Okay.
I don't know what you want, if you would
I had
consider
questions,
for your next.
and they were answered, you know,
Next
one, it was, how many people and for what period of time would they be appointed?
Right.
They would be appointed until,
Until the TIF plan is finalized.
okay,
Or indefinitely paid, one or the other.
Alright.
A quick TIF process is typically 6 months.
okay,
A long TIF process
couple years,
could be, yes.
okay, all right. And those are the questions I had, and they were sufficiently answered for me, so I don't know if any.
Our timeline for the TIF, if we do this properly without rushing it, we believe that we need to have this TIF in place by March of next year. That's kind of the tentative timeline that we've gone up with, all the processes and the filings and the bond issue. Sorry.
At what point do we get back on the repeal of the
At the same time, the TIF plan is approved.
plan?
We're not there.
No, because we wouldn't want you to repeal alerta if you're
Well,
not
yeah.
going to do the TIF plan. So at the time that you would approve the TIF plan is the time that the alerta would have to be repealed.
And all taxing entities have to agree. Let's say, for argument's sake, one of them says, no, we're not gonna repeal this, and this isn't a good idea. Does it go forward with the borough and us? Does it go forward with the borough and the school district? Does it go forward how?
I haven't been faced with that scenario, but
Okay.
my expectation.
And rats and wolf.
Well, my expectation is that LERTA is an abatement on a taxing body by taxing body basis. So hypothetically, if the,
Let's say the school district says, this isn't a good idea.
if the school district says this isn't a good idea, this isn't happening. Let's say the county doesn't want to participate for whatever reason, then it's theoretically possible that county taxes can continue to be abated under its LERTA. I think that's.
And by the way, we made the same presentation to the school board at their budget and finance committee meeting on June 9th, and they are moving ahead with a resolution to appoint their representatives to the.
Yeah, they are the principal recipient of revenue share, the school district. I think the borough's second or third.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Well done. And the only question I have on the resolution is, I understand the resolution would designate the chief clerk as the person who's going to select, who's going to serve on the committee. My only suggestion is that I believe that our director of planning, Kirk Stoner, would be an excellent choice for representation of us on this committee. And
Kirk's been at the table all along in this time.
yeah, and I think we could one or someone. But we'll consider adoption of that resolution, I guess, on Monday.
Thanks very much. Let's move on to item number 14, Commissioner Liaison Reports.
I only have a few things. Yesterday at the Open Finance meeting, Ag Extension presented the videos that had been prepared and are currently on the county website. They show everything that Ag has not only in the county, but throughout the valley. The Conservation District met, and I believe we have all received documents from Carl. The tree sale was again very successful. As I had typed here that the board agreed to support a request for $3,000 to go to the electronics recycling effort, and that will no longer happen. But the Pennsylvania Association District Conservation District will hold their conference next week in Monroeville. 911 analysis has come in from CCAP. I think each of us has received that copy, and the bill was signed by the governor on Monday. I'd like to thank those legislators who supported the bill. Last night, this board heard the report from the Carlisle Police Chief regarding the transition to county dispatch. I'd like to acknowledge Bob Shively and his staff for their work and dedication during this transition. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you, Commissioner Cross. Commissioner Herzog.
Okay, thank you. The Aging Advisory Board met on Friday, June 19th, and there was a presentation by Rachel Albright, the coordinator of our Pilot Care Transitions Program partnership with Holy Spirit Hospital, aimed at reducing hospital readmission rates among older adults. The program, which is completely voluntary on the part of the patient's participation, is aimed at helping to ensure that hospital patients, once they are released, following doctor's orders, once they get home, making sure that they're taking the proper medications or changes in medications, and that they keep up with their follow-up doctor's appointments. As with any new program, especially with something of this nature, there's a learning curve in determining what works and what doesn't work. Between February 4th, when the program commenced, and June 18th, 220 names of patients were referred to the program. A significant number of those initial referrals, 96, where their health status had changed before they left the hospital, or where they ended up being discharged to a nursing facility. Those cases followed. Another 60 declined participation in the program for various reasons, as I understand. And again, it's voluntary. But of the 47 who accepted participation in the program, only 5 ended up being readmitted to the hospital. So the program moved forward, and again, the intent is to make sure that older adults, once they're released from the hospital, take care of themselves and are being assisted in that process so that they don't have to be readmitted to the hospital. Terry Barley reported at the meeting at the Office of Aging, based on remaining 2014-15 Aging Block Grant funding from the state lottery, that we're in a position to provide some supplemental funding to our 6 senior citizen centers in the amount of about $10,000 to $15,000 each toward capital and other senior center improvements. The supplemental funding would be in addition to the $44,000 that each center receives annually from the lottery for their operations. The Harrisburg Area Transportation Study Coordinating Committee met last Friday, and among the items for action for Cumberland County-owned bridges were added to the tip: Bernheisen Bridge replacement, Bumpel Bridge replacement, Green Lake Farms Bridge rehab, and Herbsley Road Bridge replacement. Again, no direct or immediate family relationship. I would submit that it's a good name. In other action, passed unanimously on my motion, the HATS board approved a letter under the signature of the HATS chairman, Dauphin County Commissioner Jeff Haste, urging our entire congressional delegation to get behind and support passage of a long-term comprehensive federal transportation funding bill. While noting that Pennsylvania state government has done its part in the bipartisan enactment of Act 89 of 2013, the letter in essence says that it's time for the federal government to do its job. And the letter sent to our congressional delegation says in part that, quote, short-term stopgap measures keep progress at a standstill, diminish the capacity of the transportation funds already invested, and reduce the effectiveness of our long-term planning efforts and efficiencies for the future. Anything short of a long-term transportation bill will continue to undermine the advances made. And speaking of the effectiveness and efficiency of our transportation system, I would like to report at this time that I was pleased to join with my 2 commissioner colleagues this week in jointly signing a letter to PennDOT demonstrating this board's unanimous support in favor of pursuing the single transit authority model for public transit service in the region. With the possibility of cost savings of up to $2.4 million annually, as identified in phase 2 of the PennDOT study. By reducing administrative overhead, there is no doubt in my mind that by breaking down silos we can achieve a win-win-win for everybody. Savings to improve and enhance public transit service in the region for our citizens, savings to stabilize fares for all public transit users, and savings to reduce the subsidy required by Cumberland County property taxpayers. That's all I have, but I'm sure my colleagues may also want to have their thoughts on the transit regionalization effort. Just share a copy of the letter with our two folks here from the media.
Any comments or questions for Commissioner Herzog?
Well, just a comment. Thank you for that direction. I am on the CAP board. At our last CAP board meeting on last Thursday, we did decide, the CAP board, to approach each of our respective appointing jurisdictions to ask for a unified guidance, because we do have several matters like union negotiations, like facilities, et cetera, that we're dealing with. So the sooner that we can get direction from Dauphin County, the city, and now we have it from Cumberland County, will help us greatly in our discussions. So thank you for that guidance. Do you have any idea, commissioners, when the Dauphin or city, I don't know that they have acted similarly? Have you had any discussion with your colleagues, the other elected officials?
I've had, there's been some outreach made. I will tell you that I understand that there was a meeting that Toby Farber was to address. I believe that it was supposed to be this week, Harrisburg City Council, but it was postponed because apparently we had a couple of members of council who couldn't make the meeting. So I believe that's been rescheduled for July the 7th. And I'm thinking about going over there to address council that evening as well on this particular issue. I was hoping to have an opportunity to talk to Commissioner Hayes this week. Unfortunately, he was fishing on the day of the Pats board meeting, so that didn't happen. But I look forward to reaching out as our liaison on transportation issues to the surrounding area. Also, I believe there is a plan in progress, I understood correctly from our communication with our chief clerk, to have a multi-county regional get-together with, I think, to hear a presentation from one of the members of the Berks County Board of Commissioners who's been involved in the Berks and Lancaster regionalization.
July the 29th?
Okay.
22nd. The recommendation that I put forward to the chief clerk is to cancel the finance meeting that afternoon and sunshine that in the event anyone would like to attend.
So we are, to answer your question, Rick, we are moving forward. And let me share a copy of the letter with you too.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
And I want to thank Mike Clapsaddle, who's our, I want to thank Mike Clapsaddle, who's who's also a member of the CAP board on behalf of Cumberland County, for helping to draft this letter that we ink our signatures on.
Any other questions or comments for Commissioner Herzog? Thank you. Commissioner Eichelberg.
Okay, just a few items. Justin already covered the Recycling Waste Authority. Sylvia covered much of what was discussed for MHIED, and I'll fill in just a few blanks on that. The last board meeting, we had a very interesting presentation discussion regarding the Dream Partnership. I know I've alluded to this in the past meetings, but I also have some information I can pass around if anyone is interested. And this is a program that started in 2013 to provide for expanding educational opportunities at colleges for those with intellectual disabilities. And it's an expanding program. The goal is to get up to 10 colleges involved in Pennsylvania. Millersville University actually is graduating its first contingent of 10 individuals who have been participating. And I believe that took place with the spring graduation. But it's a program that's going to be an expansion. I know that Millersville is one of the local colleges, several others are involved as well, both in intellectual disabilities. So we'll see some expansion on that. Very interesting actual presentation by the lady who was the coordinator for that. Only other item there is the nominating committee of the advisory board is in active recruitment mode once again, and we will have 3 individuals leaving the advisory board this fall, so they need to fill those positions. And you may recall those positions need to be filled by individuals of particular skill levels in keeping with the advisory board's role of providing expertise. So they're seeking a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a physician, and a nurse, any combination of those. And one of those individuals must be from Perry County since we're in the work program. So anything we can do to assist with recruitment of names of individuals you may be aware of, please feel free to forward those to myself or to Sylvia, help them fill those vacancies. We did have a considerable discussion regarding ensuring turnover on that board in recent years so that we could allow other folks to participate. Now we got to fill those seats as well. So any assistance on that, greatly appreciated. As well from HIVD. Sylvia mentioned about the MH plan that Robin's coordinating, so that is complete. The hearing, I believe, is today on that. I don't know if she alluded to that or not. Okay, a couple items for planning, most of the planning items have been already brought before the commissioners, but I did ask Kirk about their monthly schedule. I do have a copy of the monthly work plan. As always, have to provide that as an update to anyone interested. Specifically, items discussed under the municipal assistance is the new zoning ordinance for Mount Holly Springs Borough that the planning office has been helping with. That is their first update in Mount Holly since the 1970s. So that was even before you were solicited, I believe. So that again is obviously one of the major goals we have for the planning department is to assist our municipalities in that. Also technical assistance, Carlisle Borough for the updated comp plan. Penn Township is conducting a land use and transportation study specifically regarding the 233 corridor and the growth that's there and what future growth would look like. Kirk also wanted me to pass along that they're very proud of the success they're having in expanding into the social media area along with the help from our communications staff. You mentioned the recent posting that they made on the Burnham Bridge project reached 16,000 people in 4 days. It's a pretty great number. So he said they're very pleased with that. They're working with the communications folks to find other opportunities for public outreach using some of those tools that are still maybe a little new for some of our citizens, but obviously being adopted and becoming a new way of life for many of us. So I think that's everything I have for planning. Very quickly, the Economic Development Corporation and Tourism Bureau, the grants application process that I referred to at the last meeting that's underway. They have feedback from 31 organizations that are intending to submit applications. Shereen says that's going to be highly competitive. Obviously, you're going to outstrip the dollars available. It's actually lots of ideas out there for how to promote visitors, visitation to the county, and lots of folks who are interested in participating and helping, and presumably lots of good ways to apply those funds. So we'd rather have more good ideas than we can fund them the other way. The 6th Annual Tourism Conference is scheduled for November 4th, 8 to 12. Breakfast as it is each year. Will be held in the States again November 4th, so it'll be a reminder of that as we proceed. The rest of that can wait. And libraries, very quickly, I did cover the library board update at the last workshop meeting. Just a reminder, July 22 is the public meeting, the 7 to 9 meeting at Bosler with the commissioners to begin wrapping up the engagement process on the consensus building. Also, the audit will be reviewed at the July board meeting, and that will come before the commissioners to follow that. Just one last thing was, there was a very interesting article in the Washington Post this week regarding some items we've already discussed, and that is the transition of libraries in the digital age. And it profiled how some of the community libraries, especially in the DC area, are tackling the challenges that come with that. These are things that have been part of our discussion, our public discussion in this consensus building process as well. So I did forward that on to Janelle. I think she'll share that with the board members, and I'd be happy to share it with anybody here. A lot of it does repeat things that Larry has dug up through the Pew Foundation research on the future of libraries, but it shows a good case study on how some of those things are being applied. So it's very interesting and very timely. That's everything I have.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Commissioner Eichelberg? Moving on to item number 15, I'd like to report an executive session held June 29, 2015 at 1 p.m. regarding personnel issues. We'd also like to request an executive session for personnel issues. Is there any other business?
Yes, please. First of all, I just want to say that it's my great privilege and honor to have been elected 4 years ago to serve as a county commissioner. I'd like to say that I believe that we've come a long way since that time. We eliminated, when I walked in the door, a $9.8 million structural budget deficit. And, you know, there's been a lot of those votes to do that and to take those actions to get our budget back in balance structurally. You know, were unanimous votes. We've had a recent disagreement with respect to this new compensation plan. And there's a saying that the majority will have its way and the minority will have its say. I want to thank our Chief Clerk, Larry Thomas, for his apology today, for the use of the word profanity in a recent Finance Committee meeting. I also want to thank him for verifying that the total cost of this pay raise for 25% of our workforce, now currently adjusted to 304 employees, is over $2.2 million to our taxpayers. I also want to thank him for verifying the information that we all learned after we were asked to act, that the projected annual cost of this action to our property taxpayers through the general fund is an added $1 million, $400,000 more than we were first told on June 4th. It is my opinion that the plan is flawed. Unfortunately, I don't have the votes to move to reconsider and take a closer look at this. Like the television network that describes itself as fair and balanced, although it's not always fair and balanced, I do not believe that this plan is fair and balanced. It's not fair and balanced for our county's workers, and it's not fair and balanced for our county's taxpayers. Now, while I certainly don't begrudge people from getting a raise when it's justified, this plan has a lot to be desired, in my opinion, both from a fairness point of view with respect to all of our employees and from a cost view with respect to our taxpayers. And while my character, integrity, and motives were questioned when I raised questions regarding this plan, I think there's 2 points that need to be made. We work for the people of Cumberland County, and they have every right to know the details of what it is we're doing with their money. Usually, when there's an attack on somebody's credibility, motives, and character, many times that doesn't say an awful lot with respect to the merit or lack thereof of what it is we're talking about. In the Senate of Pennsylvania, where I was privileged to work for many years, when someone's motives or character or integrity were questioned, they were immediately ruled out of order. Unfortunately, that didn't occur, and it wasn't even one of my colleagues, it was a staffer. In any event, I want to thank the Sentinel today, the Carlisle Sentinel, for its publishment, not only a news article, but also the list of employees without their names, because I do believe our employees are entitled to a certain degree of privacy. But in terms of the positions, it shows on the website at cumberland.com, if you go to today's story, you can actually identify the individuals, not by name, but by position, the raises that they're receiving, and what it is their new salaries are going to be under this proposal. So to a large extent, I'll leave it up to the people of Cumberland County as to whether or not they believe this is fair or not. I want to just bring to light something that I just learned the other day as the liaison to the Aging Advisory Board. Increased minimum salaries for the newly categorized senior human service case managers. And I looked at that title, I was wondering, okay, now how does that mean they're senior human case managers because they work for senior citizens, or are they senior human service case managers because they've been there for a while? The fact of the matter is this is just the title of the position. Previously, it was classified as County Caseworker 2 or Aging Care Manager. In any event, the increase in those minimum starting salaries appeared way out of line with respect to what the market demands. And again, this is having an opportunity to start to look at exactly what has occurred here, because I don't believe we had enough time to examine all of the details. But our previous starting minimum for these particular positions, starting minimum, was $36,621. And as I understand, that old minimum was substantially more than the comparable starting pay for these positions in other counties, and that there was never any difficulty in attracting employees based on the previous compensation for these positions. Starting pay for like positions in South Central Pennsylvania is somewhere from the upper 20s to about $33,000. The increase in pay of the new minimum from the old starting compensation is $12,901.29 per new employee, a new minimum for these positions of $49,522.29. The increased salaries in the Office of Aging, primarily for the huge increases in compensation for senior human service case managers, will cost the Aging Office an additional $209,000 annually. There are 13 current employees classified as senior human service case managers in the Office of Aging who will be receiving a pay raise up to the new minimum of $49,522.29. The 4 of these individuals were hired just recently and/or within the past year, and they are among those who will be receiving the extraordinary pay bumps of $12,901.29. And while I don't begrudge anybody for getting a raise that's justified, you have to ask who in this world these days gets a raise like that unless there's an increase in responsibility or duty. This isn't the case here. What's more, while I do not subscribe to the notion that seniority or experience should be the sole basis for compensation adjustments, these astronomical raises are not only far and above what the market demands, but far and above the raises being received by those who demonstrated and effective experience in doing their jobs. This is just one example of the new compensation system that, as the more it's examined, appears seriously flawed and was not ready, in my view, again, for prime time, in that experience and proven performance doing a good job apparently doesn't mean anything anymore. You cannot help but question why we'd be increasing compensation well above what the market demands for folks who are still in the learning or probationary phase of the job that they were just hired for. And I know the comment has been made about, the politics of jealousy. Well, by ramming this plan through, this very definitely serves to create the politics of jealousy among the vast majority of our county's hardworking, dedicated workforce. While many of these positions will now be exempt, as I understand, from overtime, as I've been informed, there is very little in the way of overtime in the Office of Aging. Added cost for on-call expense, which I understand is being discussed as may be eliminated as a result of these positions now being exempt from overtime. Last year, on-call expense at Aging was $10,000. So even if the on-call expense were to be eliminated by these new salary positions, that doesn't come close to making up for the added $209,000 expense for these raises. With this increased cost to pay salaries above the market, and again, just using the Office of Aging as an example, the concern is that this may very well impact available funding for heating assistance for low-income senior citizens, and/or a reduction in available funding in the next year to assist our senior citizen centers, and/or perhaps other programs or efforts to serve the needs of our county's rapidly escalating and for the most part, fixed income senior citizen population. Fact is, the $209,000 expense for these higher salaries has to come from somewhere. The Office of Aging does a great job for us, and they've done a good job of stretching available dollars. But they don't have a money printing machine down there, and neither do we. And as the liaison to the board from the Aging Office, I'm aware of a burgeoning caseload in the options program, which provides in-home services for our frail elderly so that they can continue to stay in their homes. And as I've been informed, this added $209,000 expense has already resulted in delaying a request for an additional care manager to help handle the increase in the caseload. Again, I just want to say that everybody's entitled to their opinions. I don't believe anybody's character, integrity, or motives should be questioned when they raise questions. I believe that we should have taken some more time to get this right. And I also will be interesting to see how we pay for this additional $1 million expense. Thank you.
Is there any other business?
I do have a couple of comments. I'm not going to begin to try to address that comprehensively because it would just take way too long. But the fact is that we all know those numbers did shift. We expected some shifting. I requested that the chief clerk provide us with updated information that would answer point for point the accusations made by Commissioner Hertzler in writing, and that was supplied to the media as well as to the commissioners. We received that information late yesterday. I'm going to ask for that. It is a public document. I'm going to ask for that information to be turned over to the press as well so they can get the full range of facts in regards to the proposal that's been made. I don't think anybody should object to that. It does provide a pretty comprehensive look at where the savings are and where the dollars will come from that are mentioned. I think there's a lot of facts that are missing from Commissioner Hertzler's statement, and maybe if we provide that written documentation, that will be helpful in addressing the full range of facts.
And thanks, Larry, for putting together the sort of analysis questions I had. Can we afford it? Is it sustainable? You addressed those specifically. The opportunity provide our workforce, and I'll read, with the confidence that they will be treated by dealing directly with the county, cementing the partnership for continued improvement to cost effectiveness and service moving forward. And that there will be no more automatic increases without consideration for performance. Again, you address what were some changes that are forthcoming and anticipated, and again, as a work in progress, truly it is. When you try to move an organization this size with this many departments, these many employees, it is not going to happen overnight. And I believe that the engagement put forward to the department heads and to the elected officials, which were represented on this compensation advisory group, time will be needed to address additional concerns that are forthcoming. Failing to do anything puts you in the same position that you were in for many, many years. So I've not changed my stance on this, that it is timely and needs to move forward. So what was provided to us July 1 is going to go forward. Okay.
Any other business?
That's for one last comment, and I would just say, I think the information that the team put together is extremely thorough. We know pretty much as we can possibly know. There will always be those unknowns, but that's the nature of decision making at executive level. So I think the compensation group certainly deserves our appreciation and thanks. The comment was made earlier about reducing the structural deficit. I think there's some disagreement on how successfully we've done that, but we obviously have made some progress. And frankly, I think you can chalk a lot of that up to 3 significant initiatives that the county's undertaken. They are gain sharing, the early separation, and this move toward performance pay. All those initiatives have moved forward expeditiously in an incredibly short period of time since the chief clerk and COO has been brought on board. So I think he deserves special kudos for that.
And in your statement here, the principal focus has been on the impact of the general fund itself.
Yeah, I just one follow-up if I could, and I'll keep it very brief. And that is that, bottom line is that nobody was interested in stopping this. What was important to me is we got all the facts before we acted upon it, and we considered all the information, and instead of, just, well, you know by now, and people in Cumberland County should know by now, I'm not a rubber stamp for anybody.
Is there any other business? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.